Yo, we're recording.
We're live.
We're live.
What's up, B?
What's going on, Nick? How you doing, man?
I'm great, man. What's top of mind?
What's top of mind? What's been coming through pretty strongly for me this past weekend has been, um, yeah, with everything going on, with everything happening in this country and this world at the moment, that there's a lot to be done, right? And there's more that I can be doing, you know, and that's been kind of coming through very strongly for me. I think, namely with the just the waste management systems here in Hawaii, and the sad reality of putting a lot of film packaging into the waste, a lot of plastic film packaging, because I mean, during COVID, the bulk sections of stores are not open, right? So the bulk sections of stores are not open. The farmers markets, I don't even know if they're open, but there was a stay-at-home order until recently, and a lot of the food at farmers markets is wrapped in plastic. So we've been getting stuff from Costco, which wholesale, less packaging, better. But then the disposal of that packaging, there are only very select things that you can recycle here. And in general, there are only very select plastics that you can recycle. You and I both know. And yeah, I think being back here in the US, for this being the longest that I've been back in the US in half a decade, it's like I've noticed that the amount of waste being produced by myself individually is more than it's been in the last however many years. And I think this weekend, this has really been coming through of like, there's more to be done, right? It's like, how many more calls to action do we need, right? The entire West Coast is burning, right? Like shit's changing. So yeah, throwing the pack, I was like, yo, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. So, but I'm just like, what took me so long to actually look into what that better way is? And I did find that there are some recycling stations in Honolulu, that I can take some of the stuff to. I'd say a small percentage of stuff, but still there's a good chunk of things that the only way you can, that's the only way to dispose of them here is to throw them in the rubbish.
So let me ask you a question. If you were the king dictator of Hawaii,
yeah,
what would you change in order to fix the plastic problem?
So it's difficult during this time specifically because packaging has a very protective it has a function. Packaging has a very clear function in terms of preservation of freshness, in terms of preservation of cleanliness, right? When you have something like a virus going around, right? That's why stores' bulk sections are not open. It's just so it's tough to say now. I think it's really about it's really about, well, I think setting up these integrated resource recovery centers. I actually think these resource recovery centers are a great model. And I think having these centers that are in, the different districts or different locales where people, because we can process a lot of different things. There's some stuff that's actually waste. But then there's a lot of stuff that we actually do have the tools and systems to be able to process. So I think it's about setting up, investing in that infrastructure, because as a country, the US, we've just gotten so used to shipping it off to China, and China has the infrastructure. They have decent infrastructure for recycling. But now China's not really buying the waste anymore, right? So it's like we need to build that infrastructure in-house, you know? So I think A, building the infrastructure, but also B, changing the conversation, changing the narrative, changing the story that we tell ourselves, and stop calling this shit garbage. Stop calling things garbage. Stop calling things waste. These are materials. They're materials, you know, and not only are they materials, in a lot of cases, they are materials that are made from non-renewable resources that have taken so many years to build up. Right. And so to look at those things as garbage is, you know, we have to change that narrative. Right. You know, and I think if we changed the narrative, that alone could prompt people to think about waste differently, people to think about where it goes differently, people to think about what they buy differently. If we start acknowledging the materials that these are, the valuable materials that these are.
Yeah.
And then of course, you know, and this with Hawaii, it's difficult because most of the goods here are imported. Right. So most of the goods here are imported. Right. So it's like that lends itself very well to packaging. You know, there's so many things here imported. Because yeah, dude, it's complex, man. The waste management is such a multi-stakeholder chain. You know, you have the manufacturers, right? You have the manufacturers. Sometimes those manufacturers are not the brand that's selling them. Sometimes they are, right? But you have the whole manufacturing part of it. You have the consumer part of it. You have the post-consumer part of it, right? So it's like, you can't point the finger at any one person. I guess it's easiest to go the furthest up the chain at the manufacturing level and say, yeah, most of the responsibility lies on them, right? But is that fair? We are in a free market, right? We're able to make decisions as consumers, right? So yeah, it's complex. It's complex. That's a very long way of saying that it's complex. And I think the two things I would, you know, just to sum it up, two things would be investing in resource recovery centers, you know, or resource recovery infrastructure, and B, changing the narrative, changing the story that we tell ourselves. And I've actually had thoughts on how we combine these two. You know, what if those resource recovery centers were also educational centers? You know, what if they were after school centers for kids? What if they were maker spaces?
Yeah.
What if they were maker spaces for youth to make shit, to create things, to think about materials, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I think there are ways to combine those two things.
No, I think they're all good ideas. You know, I feel like my approach, if I was dictator of Hawaii, would be much simpler. One, I would tax the shit out of any company who, based on the material usage, right, make them responsible for the entire supply chain of it. So everywhere from manufacturing it all the way through the process of someone consuming it and making sure it's recovered, right? You put the responsibility on the guys who are making the decisions. Two, I would make plastic ugly as fuck. I would put a law in place that makes all plastic putrid pink, make it look like shit and vomit, right? And just make it so it's no longer a viable material. And the warning is in the plastic in the same way that the warnings on the cigarette cases.
Yeah, I like that.
The warnings on like the labels in Mexico that says there's an excess of calories, of sugar, of X, Y, and Z, right? So we use the forces at hand to attempt to solve what's happening on the packaging level. So you go to the supermarket, right? Everything looks like someone just took a shit and vomited all over it.
Yeah.
Right? It wakes you up to how cancerous and pollutive these things really are, not only for your body, but for the environment as well. That's what I would do. And you'd see a rapid change.
I like that. Yeah. I think that, and that's a vehicle to, I think, changing the narrative. You know, because once you start to put the narrative in front of people and it's so visible, you know, once you make it visible, because right now, people say this packaging's biodegradable, this packaging's compostable, but no one's saying the opposite.
Right.
No one's saying this packaging is not going anywhere. It can't be recycled. It can't be composted. It's not going anywhere. It's going into the landfills. It's going into the oceans. It's going, we're not, everyone's saying, oh, this is compostable, it's biodegradable, but no one's, there's no, that visible symbol, like you're mentioning, is not there in the reverse scenario. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very interesting. And that's effective as fuck.
It really would be. I think it'd be very fast.
Yeah.
I would put warnings in it. I would make it gross. I would make it, look like the virus that Gaia sees it as.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like this is a problem, and it is something that you're contributing to it. And when you're seen with it, you look like a fucking asshole. Because right now it's sexy, man. It's like, I got a plastic water bottle right here. I've had it for way too long. It's like clear and plastic and pretty and perfect and cut. And
nice,
it looks
and
like something
holdable.
Right. It's like it's it's like, look at it's terrible. It needs to be something that it's really gross to look at, and I think that would solve a lot of the problems, and we're already doing it. That's why in the cigarette cases, you've got pictures of people's weird teeth, right? It says smoking kills, it has these labels, and we need a way to label this stuff as such, something that is horrible for the environment.
Just like cigarettes, because the plastic kills as well. The plastic, we're consuming plastic through fish.
Microplastic. Yeah.
We're consuming microplastics through fish.
Even in our water supply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's killing us. It's an amazing, it was an amazing innovation, the creation of plastic. Of like this durable material that can be used for so many things. Think about all the great things that plastic is used for, or can be used for, like, I guess this is plastic, but then it's like, okay,
I mean, your AirPods.
My AirPods are plastic, have plastic, right? It's like, well, how could they have been made otherwise, right? But I think there are, the plastic, the single-use plastic is the killer. It's the killer. And now I'm making a more conscious effort before I buy products like AirPods, or like, I want to get my mom an air fryer. But I'm like, I don't want to be getting more things. I don't think we really need to be producing more things. I think we have a surplus of stuff on this planet. So before looking at getting my mom an air fryer, I want to look at what is the take back policy of the company that makes these air fryers. What is their, because I had a clipper. I've had a clipper, like a shaver for hella long, dude, maybe like 7 years, 6 years. It finally,
tell me which one that one is. Fuck.
Yeah,
I give a new one every. Yeah, those things suck.
Yeah, it gave out. It died, right? So I was like, where does this go? Where does this thing go? I was like, what do I do with this? I'm sitting here with a bunch of metal with a battery in it. Where does this go? So I was like, I need to look at what Philips policy is, and how do I get this back to Philips? Because this is like, this has actual waste, like batteries, that's hazardous waste, right? Like a AA battery or something like that. But yeah, I think looking more into what these companies' policies are before purchasing from them is important. It's like, can you give it back to them? Right? What is the life cycle of this product?
Yeah. I personally love, Lululemon is a great approach to this. You can like take shorts back to them. They'll repair them for you. Not during COVID though. But you can take shorts back to them. They'll recycle them for you. They'll also like give you a new pair. They really have a really great approach to supply chain.
Yeah.
I think every company should take it
I
upon
agree.
themselves to, I guess the question is, like, shipping it back to Phillips from Hawaii, would that be more of a detriment to the environment than recycling it on point? Like how can you optimize those resources?
Exactly. And I think, yes, to get it back to Phillips, back to the place where they can actually use this, it depends though. There are a lot of factors, dude, that go into measuring footprint and measuring impact. There's so many factors. But I feel like there's also, one thing that I think about is just the excess of stuff that we have on this planet, right? Just like the surplus of stuff. We have a lot of fucking stuff, yo. There's a lot of stuff and a lot of things. Stuff and things.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, how do
It's a strong word when you
right?
say it.
It's just stuff.
I really feel it,
Just because it's like we just have a lot of stuff. We have so much
we do.
stuff,
Yeah.
And I think, are there ways where are there better ways? Are there more efficient, more effective ways to get things to the right people when they need it? And that sounds so simple, right? But is there like an efficient way to, there's got to be, is there a more efficient system to getting, and this Phillips is a bad example because no one can use the shaver. It doesn't work anymore unless it's repaired. But oftentimes people do throw shit out that is fine, that's good. Or people give it to Goodwill and the Salvation Army and think that they donated it, and think that by giving it to Goodwill, it's going to end up where it needs to be, which that's not the case, You're banking on the chance that someone walks into Goodwill, selects that one. What if no one gets it? Then where does it go? What does Goodwill do with it? I don't know. Right. But there's got to be more efficient systems on how do we get things to the right people when they need it. With all this, I mean, look at what Amazon's doing in terms of supply chain, in terms of logistics, in terms of, is there a way to apply some of that to used goods or recycling, right? Or reusing, right? In a way, right? We have all this supply chain infrastructure. And I think the Lululemon example's great. I think all companies need to look at supply chain holistically, right? Supply chain does not stop when someone buys the product. It does not.
Yeah.
You are responsible for that chain, right? You should be.
Yeah. I feel like it's something where we have to have more leaders in the space. We need people who, and give people like yourself the opportunity to vote with their dollar.
Sure.
I think every product's going to have a sustainable alternative, and I think it's an opportunity for entrepreneurs to come into the space and say there's a better way. Eat the cost that's associated with the better way, and give people the opportunity to support the better way. I feel like that's going to be the catalyst for the change, and people will wake up to it. I do believe that you have reusable shampoo bottles. I mean, everything in front of you, there is a reasonable alternative, possibly with the exception of the electronics. But you're right, like greenwashing is real. The process of taking some shit and then saying we're sustainable is real. I mean, even Apple, you'd have fucking cracked up. Right before this talk, I was watching their presentation with all their new products, updated iPads, updated Apple Watch, amazing technology. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Apple fan, but they had this one section where they're like, and in the Apple Watch, we removed the USBs. It was like something like, and they're like, and that change is going to save the equivalent of 50,000 cars on the road per year. And I'm just like, bro, you guys use the Apple fucking Lightning port. The entire world is on the fucking USB standard that they can then recycle and reuse all the different chargers. And you guys go to an entirely different paradigm and are notorious for having proprietary chargers. There's literally millions of these things in landfills, and these guys are talking about one fucking minor change to product and then touting as being environmentally conscious. I was appalled. I was like, It was crazy to me. And then it's like, even as a company as woke as Apple, the most valuable company in the world is doing this shit. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was kind of shocking.
Mm.
Like from a supply chain perspective, how they can tout that while, they could have went with the USB standard, engineered around it. And granted, there's a lot of reasons why they did it from an engineering standpoint, but it would have put the world on a universal system.
Yeah.
And with that becomes modularity, and with that comes reusability.
Yeah.
And they always decide to go in a different direction in the name of engineering, which is great, but it's also it's not sustainable. So I don't know. It put a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think in a lot of cases that universal standard is typically the more, friendly standard, right? The more, the more friendly choice because of that reusability. That's what standards provide. That's what universality. Is that even a word?
Yeah, open source.
Yeah. That's what it provides,
Yeah.
right? Is that cross functionality, right? Is that usability, right?
And I believe there's a lot of opportunities for innovation that as well. Like Tesla open source all their patents, right?
Yeah.
The more modular things are, and the more we allow others to tap into and innovate them, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah.
Anything that can be globalized and used across all standards is naturally going to have innovation behind it, and can then, even if you're engineering a viable alternative, you have the ability to do so because all the standards are open source. And I do believe, like, above imagine this, like above a certain threshold of manufacturing, right?
Mm.
Let's suppose for any product there's more than, I don't know, 1 million units produced per year, for example. We make it a requirement to have open standards on those products. Like have one standard for a bottle, right? And then that way we can police and innovate in the bottle and the manufacturing process year over year.
Yeah.
Right? Like you could potentially apply that same standard to any sort of container creator. There's only a limited number of containers, a limited number of these one-use anythings, right? I believe that a lot of it's the same. It's like, why don't we coordinate and, actively work to make a world better place and integrate the public-private partnerships to do so? It's feasible. The ideas make sense, like sharing everything at a global level and start seeing as Team Human and not fucking Team Nestle versus Team NVIDIA versus all this shit.
I agree. I was having a conversation yesterday with Luke, Habitat, and this was actually not that conversation. This was I did a guest. I was like a guest in my dad's digital media class. He teaches out of college. He teaches out of college in Florida. So I came on as a guest.
So cool. I follow his fucking. He's always jamming, man.
Yeah.
He's got the coolest Instagram of any dad I've ever seen. He's so funny.
He's always jamming.
Sun's Eye on Instagram.
Yes, Sun's Eye. SUNSIEYE. So I was saying that, man, if the world would be a fundamentally different place if we applied the same thinking, the same thinking and the same open source environment and culture that exists with software to other parts, other functions, other verticals of society. The world would be a fundamentally different place. Because right now, the concept of open source is something that is very, specific to, or was born out of software, right? And it completely flies in the face of capitalism, right? Completely. Or maybe not, right? One can argue maybe not. But either way, I think if you apply that thinking to other spaces, I think we have a totally different way of operating. Right? And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about in software is that no piece of software that we use on a daily basis is not leveraging open source software.
Nothing.
Nothing. Nothing. Yeah. Like that tells you everything you need to know. Like we could not have gotten collectively, as a collective, we could not have gotten anywhere close to where we are without this concept of open source. So we can look at this as a case study. We can really look at software as a case study and say, look at how much progress we've made in such little time. And I think, you know, perhaps more credit than people care to realize is due to the fact this culture of open source. You know, even even companies like Facebook, right? Commercial entity, Airbnb, commercial entity, right? But they're open sourcing things for the collective, you know. Maybe a bit of commercial interest in there, but but there is this, you know.
I feel like it's more so what you'll realize is, you know, once the standards exist, you're not giving away the moat. The moat being the advantages of your company. What happens is you're giving opportunity for other players in the space who have mutual interest to take their leverageable genius and expand the moat. Like when you can actually control the open source ecosystem, you have a lot of power. That's why Google has so much power around the open web standards. Yeah. Right. You have Apple with so much power around the open standards for charging stations. Right. There's so many, and Tesla fully recognizes that the more adoption of their standard of the EVs, electric vehicle chargers, the more they can then have Tesla's work cross-functionally across the entire world. So a lot of people see open source as a threat to their IP, intellectual property, but it couldn't be further from the truth. So what you're doing is you're allowing other people, both private and public individuals, right, being a private company or a public citizen, to tap into that genius and then repurpose it for what they're doing, and it adds back to that collective genius, right? You're collaborating at scale. So yeah, I believe there's going to be so much more of this in the coming years, especially with the innovations coming 3D printing. I think there's going to be so many things that are going to be integrated when you have integrated circuitry into 3D printing. I don't think it'll be far-fetched for our kids to be printing out the latest iPod, you know, the latest, you know, like you'd have a water bottle one moment, put it down and have a fork next. Yeah. It sounds crazy, but a lot of the underlying technology to be able to do that, it's going to be, you know, almost like a video game where you're leveraging the same pixels to build different things. For sure. Right. So you know, I do believe that, just open standards in general, now that I'm thinking about it, for containers, if you just did that, be the company to do that, and then innovate on it year over year to say, hey, here's a more viable alternative, like you're gonna win. Yeah. There's open source is an advantage. A lot of companies are, you know, it's almost like we have this green movement of like, for every product there's a sustainable alternative, but maybe even, you know, for every product there should be an open source alternative. Maybe that's another avenue for innovation, which is going unrecognized and unrealized in a lot of different markets. Yeah, for sure. It definitely stimulates innovation. Yeah, 100%. Right. Well, because then you're the thought leader in the space. You have the collective attention of people who really care about it. Like the guys who really fucking know a lot of things are interested in open source. You know, because they want to copy pasta and make their own. Like you know, for certain things, I'll go to say some people and they'll be like, "This is the way to go." And you know, you're really gonna attract some interesting early adopters the more information you share about the very specifics of what you are doing. People like that. It's why it's Your Super, the superfoods company I work at. We put all the ingredients on the front of the box, man, not in the back. Right? Right there, looking the fuck at you. Right? You can see exactly what's in it, and we talk all about it. You know, like that's something that I think more companies should embrace. Here's how it's made, and go ahead, take it, run with it. We love it. Like we want to spread the myth. It's not about the what's in it or selling you more of it. It's the mission behind it. Yeah, for sure, and transparency. In that mission. Yeah. And there's a lot there that can be unpacked. I agree. It's also just building global standards, man. I really think there's something to this universal API thing. You know, just creating a single entry point so that any developer or anybody in Minecraft or anybody anywhere can, like, almost like Instagram, go and tap in, do @Stripe, @Eli, at whatever the fuck, and then be able to pull the relevant data that's available around that specific endpoint. And I think that would be an interesting, sort of bring everything that used to be so complex and all these different softwares, all these different open source technologies, bring it under a single endpoint. And I think that would be an interesting innovation.
Yeah, but yeah. So are you thinking that would all be hosted on a central server, or would it be hitting all these different servers?
I think it would be microservice based.
Right.
So that's always the challenge, right? It's like with open source, you have to find the right balance between centralization, right, and standardification, and keeping things open source, right? Like you need standards, right, and they really should encapsulate best practices for delivery, right? Like everything that it should be optimized to a certain set of standards, and you really got to figure out what those standards are. And what's great about data is that it's everywhere. Like it's like they didn't anticipate this in like the early 1900s, right? They thought it's like everything in data can be delivered over the air and in a very standardized way. And I think that's a very prime example of how we can centralize all these complex everything into a standard model of a global universal API that anybody can tap into. And that same model should be adopted for other things. The way we make bottles, the way we make chargers, the way we manufacture what is effectively all the same shit. Let's do it to the most optimal level of human engineering possible. Let's not settle for fucking anything until it is the most optimized and the most functionally prevalent, as well as environmentally conscious, that we can possibly do as a human species. Let's not give up on things, get lost in competition. Let's do things to the very fucking best of our ability at a global level. That's the vision.
I agree. And my question to that would be, then what become the factors that companies compete on? If we take this clipper example, right, and let's say there was a global standard for clippers, what then becomes the factors that clipper company A and clipper company B, what are those differentiators? Is it just simply brand?
It will be mostly branding. And here's the thing. Everything functions under power law. There's not a single market that I can think of from a consumer perspective that the winner in the space, it consolidates all that power. Johnny Ive was not the designer for Apple iPhones. He was the designer for the entire industry, right? Everybody copied Apple. It's just the way the world goes, and that's the way the world is going. So I believe that most things will come to mirror the Apple model, where you have one very clear winner, and then you have everyone else playing catch up. But which is great, because you're going to have somebody that sells everything at a premium at that standard, right? Then other people tap into those resources, and then people are going to create products that hit lower price points, right? But you're always pushing the bounds of the engineering and manufacturing behind it.
For sure. And I think with these global standards, and looking at a global definition of optimal, right? Man, so many things would become accessible. So many things would become so much more accessible.
Everything would be.
And it would have massive impact for the planet, right? Just like, open source.
And if you make accessibility the ethos, meaning that we take these standards and we make them so anybody in any nation with any material can replicate locally using their own flavor, it would have massive impact on global supply chain as well.
I agree. And everyone's talking, so many companies now, and it's all about design for accessibility, right? But it's like, but you have to apply that to things that go beyond your product, beyond your UI, beyond, like, look at the whole chain, right? And how do we design for accessibility at the manufacturing level, right? And I think when you start to ask that higher level question, then it starts to get into, okay, well, clearly that global, that standardization would be more optimal for accessibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we should just start with something simple. Start with like a fucking drinking straw. You
Yeah.
know, start there. Have the designs open there. Have it so you have, all the different documents and ways of making a drinking straw, right? How do
No
you, how,
NDAs.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, just start with something simple and just, yeah, man, wouldn't it be amazing if we just come together and think as a planet, think as a species?
And that's the crazy thing is we can now, and we
Yeah,
haven't. It's like for
yeah,
the first time in human history, we have the ability to think collectively, to communicate collectively, and we haven't taken advantage of that opportunity, really.
mm,
We've only scratched the surface, right? But now we have
yeah,
the ability to communicate globally, and we have only scratched the surface.
hmm yeah. Yeah, we can start to begin thinking like clusters of people and in
Yeah,
parallel and mass scale. It's gonna be very interesting what the collective brain power of everyone does, especially when you integrate that with AI.
I agree. I agree. What are your okay? Two things. Lean into that a little more. The integration with AI, and then I had a question.
I
But
mean,
I'm
we're already
curious.
doing it, man.
Yeah,
A lot more things than I think you're even cognizant of are AI driven,
yeah,
right? It's like even the way that your earbuds are processing sound. Most of the stuff that you're doing on your iPhone is neural network powered. This stuff
for
is
sure.
making its way into everything that you're doing. You're not even thinking about it, right?
Yeah,
Like you got to understand, like Google's building a global brain, right? Every
yeah,
single query and every single one of their services all being centralized into one data repository. All of Google, the entire fucking thing, is one giant library. When you work at Google, you can pull any part of Google and work on it, and then push it right back up into into their centralized server, right? It's like the whole code base is one thing. So everything that you touch Google related is already AI driven, and you're actively feeding that machine, right? Everyone on the planet Earth at this point, with the exception of China, God bless your souls, uses Google, right? So you got to understand, it's already becoming a thing, and there's going to be an inflection point where, especially with all this shit happening in Neuralink, where you'll have your own personal AI, right? You'll be feeding it all your data, and it will learn everything about you, right? Like
sure.
that's singularity. When we
Mm,
become fully integrated with computers, and we already see it. There's so many things, even like the Zoom, how it's processing our voice is all machine learning driven.
mm,
So the day is here. You're already giving access to it, and I think there's going to be more intimate ways to do so.
mm, for sure. I agree. And then the question I had was around this thinking and acting globally. What do you think are the biggest barriers to that at the moment? Why do you think that hasn't been the case?
Yeah. Well, I feel like one of the biggest barriers to it is everyone talks about loving yourself. And everyone talks about that. It's like love yourself, love yourself, love yourself. Well, the self is a bit of a problem, right?
Yeah,
Because we're
yeah,
always identifying with, this concept of, yeah, this is who I am, right?
yeah, yeah,
This is who I think I am. I think I'm Nick. I think I'm this guy. I live here. All these like these adjectives, when really, when you think about the self, you gotta really integrate and recognize you're part of this greater whole,
mm,
right? Like we're all different expressions of the same. You're not different than the floor, than the wall, than the couch, than the tree, than the earth, right? You're not different than the person down the street. And the more we can integrate that at a human level, that knowledge, understanding that we are all the same, and we all come from one place, and it is a place of love, right? Where I stop seeing you as the other, or anybody as the other. That's when you can start to integrate these learnings of, um, this is who we are, and that changed a lot of thinking, right?
mm, mm,
Everything becomes more connected. You'll find yourself into a perpetual state of self-love. And when you hurt another person or compete against another person or do harm to the planet or to anything, you're just doing it to yourself.
Yeah.
We're just doing it to ourselves, right?
Yeah. Mm. Mm. Hell yeah. And what do you think about, this is kind of still on that point of thinking and acting globally. What do you think about populations that aren't connected to the internet? Do you think that that is an inevitability, that we should all be connected to the internet in some way, shape, or form? Or do you think
It,
it's
it,
a
it will
positive
be.
that, yeah.
It will be because the prices of everything is dropping incrementally. You tons of initiatives to bring the world online. And I believe at this stage in history, it is a human right to have the right to internet. Um, and everybody will be connected, period. I really
Yeah,
can't imagine a world where anybody is left behind at this
for
point. There's
sure.
too much incentive, too much upside for views and clicks, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, and it ain't so expensive, right? Like
Yeah.
the infrastructure and everything that's necessary. How many people are offline still? That's an interesting question.
I think probably a good 2 billion, maybe 2 to 3 billion.
No way.
I would say so.
There's no way.
You don't think
Two
2 billion
bill?
people are not online?
That's 2 out of every 7 people. There's
That
no
aren't.
way.
Yeah, I think
It's
that's.
mostly in Africa. This is,
I
hold
would
on.
say. I would say 2 bill.
What? 3.2 billion people
Yeah,
remain
2-3 bill
offline?
for sure. That's all.
What?
Yeah, dude. That's like, not everyone's online.
Huh. Also, out of the 4.5 billion people who are online, half of them use ad blockers.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Well, I think that everybody will be inevitably become online. I think the
Mm.
incentives are high enough and costs are falling, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know?
it is a it is a utility. It's a
Yeah.
utility. You know, I was talking to my mom a week ago, or this past weekend, and she was telling me about the times when salesmen would come to her door selling encyclopedias.
Wow.
Like, in the concept of it, like, I remember encyclopedias. I was like, wow, whoever the fuck created encyclopedia, that's cool. That's a very useful thing, you know? But like, I remember
Yeah.
encyclopedias, but now it's like
Yeah.
all of that is, you know,
Right.
it's a,
Damn.
it's such a, the point is, it's such a utility that I think giving
Yeah.
everyone access to it and allowing them to choose how they want to use it, I think would be a positive.
Well, I think there's less choice than people realize.
Yeah.
There is
Yeah,
choice, but all these things are optimized to use your attention, right?
for sure.
So a lot of these people don't even, 3.2 billion people. Holy shit! I mean, that's surprising, but they're not sinking 8 hours of their time into their devices.
I know.
Not taking half of their waking hours and putting it into their phones.
And that's
So
healthy.
is it? Yeah.
That's healthy. We are like, think about how much time in a day you spend looking at a screen, whether it's a computer screen,
All,
a phone screen.
all of it.
Yeah, right. Now, is that good? No, surely not. You know,
Mm,
uh,
I don't know.
it's just okay. Whether it's good or bad, let's say we don't know. What we can agree on is that it is abnormal. We did not
Well,
evolve. We did not
I
evolve.
really I don't know. I don't know. I feel like we're always evolving, and I really think that a lot of this instantaneous communication, it's always been here. We've just encapsulated into these devices. I think the superpower nowadays is being discerning with your attention,
Mm.
right? When you have these like micro universes in the form of your computer, your iPad, your phone, that you can dive anywhere in the metaverse of the global encyclopedia of knowledge, unless you're in China. That's you have to be extremely discerning as to where your attention is going,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So I do believe that, and I think everyone thinks this, like, how I use it for the right reasons. I'm sure everyone says that. But you
Yeah.
also know, if you're not using it for the right reasons. You fucking know. Well, we all get a little, I watch a YouTube video every now and then,
Yeah.
but I do believe there's more net positive with technology than there's net negative.
Mm.
And, in a decade, we're going to laugh at the way we used to use this shit. I think,
Yeah.
hopefully, I really don't know anymore, man. The rise of TikTok, the rise of these fucking social networks, there's a lot of wasted time, man. Facebook Instagram encapsulate what, on average, an hour a day of every user?
Yeah. A lot of which are younger folks. And
Right?
like that's
Impressionable.
very impressionable, right? Changing
Yeah.
how, like, views of self-worth. Like you have and I was watching, dude, there's a great Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma that just came out. You should watch it. It's really good.
A lot of people have already recommended this to me. Yeah.
Yeah. But one thing that Tristan Harris was saying, he was the former design ethicist at Google, and then he created like Center for Humane Technology. He was saying a lot of people have the misperception that these things are tools. Like we keep referring to them as tools, but he was saying a tool is neutral and you decide how you use it. It's like with these, these are commercial interests that are, dictating how you're using it, what you're seeing, what you're getting, right? It's no longer a tool. We can't look at these as tools. Tools are neutral things. And
yeah,
which he has a valid point, but thinking about what these programs are doing to younger generations, and when it starts to affect your view of self-worth, that's an issue. Are you, is it breaking up?
Hey, you're dropping out.
Am I here?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, it's like, I believe that the world's going through an awkward phase.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
Like we're going through an awkward phase, and we're gonna have to find, where the best use of all this information that we're putting out into the world is going to go.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think we got to figure out our own relationship to it. I've got 7 Instagram photos. It's like, it's not a thing in my life.
Yeah.
I really don't like putting shit out there, and that's been detrimental to my life. I think like at this stage, a lot of the shit I've been leaning into, I think I could have done a lot more with it, having a big audience and, putting that deliberate effort to build it. Right.
Yeah.
But here we are, and but you're right. It's not a tool. It's something that it's controlled end to end by some very fucking smart people who are optimizing it for your attention. They want your attention. And it's in order to influence you in a certain way and to compel you, so you continue coming back, so they can display ads. That's what their end goal is.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Yeah. It's an awkward phase. I would say it's an awkward phase. And I do think back to the relationship with the screen, I think that's part of the awkward phase. I think we're gonna move post-screen,
soon
with augmented reality. We're gonna
there is
gonna be a
Jobs
post-screen society.
Bro, if you know how whack the fucking Apple announcement today was? It was like, oh, here's like some innovation. Here's like some cute updates to the iWatch. They can actually measure your blood oxygen level, which is very impressive. That's impressive. Granted. And here's some updates to the iPad, and goodbye. right? Like, don't get me wrong. Tim Cook scaled the shit out of Apple, $2 trillion company. As an investor, I'm very grateful. However, fucking if Steve Jobs was alive, we'd already be in augmented reality, period. We'd already be in this new inevitability. And that's also gonna, the opportunity to augment the world. Everything you look at, to display it in a new and fresh way. It's like the world becomes a screen. Right?
Yeah.
Pixels live in the three-dimensional space, right? So it's an opportunity to revisit how you see the world. Like, one thing I'd really like to create is you wear these glasses around town, you can see the output of all the cars and the aeroplanes using machine vision. Just see and change the color of it, man. Imagine if it was purple or green or something gross.
For sure.
Right? So you can actually see the impact on the environment of these invisible factors.
And even what you were mentioning before about the plastic, right? Like, what if that was
definitely
that was an augmentation, right? That was augmented. Right. And when you're going through the grocery store, when you're going to the store, when you're, it's a filter.
As it fucking should be. Anything that's one use should be seen as what it is. This is the opportunity to dress things up as you see them, make them interactable, and also make them useful in ways that you couldn't even imagine previously.
For sure.
There's a lot of opportunities that are upcoming, and it's an opportunity to reinvent everything. And we got to wait for Tim Cook to pull the trigger, because we're giving all the power to Apple.
Yeah.
All of it, for better or for worse.
Yeah. And I think in this post-screen society, I think it's, we get into territory where we can, I think already Earth, it's interesting to look at Earth as an interface, right? Because an interface is a medium for interaction, right? That's why this is an interface, is because we interact with it, right? You interact with an interface. Earth is an interface. We interact with it. I think when we start to get deeper into augmented reality, the role of designers is going to evolve to that way of thinking, looking at the world as an interface, right? Looking at our environments as an interface, which they currently are, but I think augmented reality is going to inject that thinking into, it's going to be standard for designers to be thinking in that way, which right now we think of interfaces as, the knobs on my stove, the screen on my phone.
Well, the question should become, if you were to ask every object in your immediate vicinity, what would it say? Right? When you take out your bus pass, what would it show? What would it say? What would it show you? Would it show you the routes? Right? If you looked at, your anything, just think about all the things it wants to say to you. Or as the designer, what do you want it to say?
Right. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thought. Everything's going to have a personality now. It's going to be an integrated interface, and there's going to be a lot of room for creativity. And my only hope is that Apple, because it's not a tool, it's not neutral, right? I'm just hoping they don't block a lot of the emerging possibility that comes with AR.
For sure. I agree.
Yeah.
Cool.
Should we cut it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All
It's
right.
been real, guys.
Peace, y'all.
Thank you.